Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the second week of June 2026. I'm Kellen Walker. This week, the UAW reached a deal with the Dauch Corporation to keep axles flowing to General Motors' most profitable pickups. We tallied up the Trump-era costs for Japanese automakers, and the numbers are pretty staggering. And Ford wants to move orphaned Edge and Escape buyers up to the pricier Explorer. Will it work? Joining me now to talk about it are the usual suspects. Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for us at Automotive News. Mike, how you doing?
Good, Kel. How are you?
Doing all right. And Larry Velaquette covers Toyota, Subaru, and Mazda for us here at Automotive News. Larry Legend, after a 2-week vacation, it is nice to have you back, sir.
That's good to be back. And since you referencing the usual suspects, you can call me Kaiser Soze, right?
Oh, Jesus. I haven't seen that movie in so long. Anywho, let's get started because we're gonna go off on a tangent if we start talking about that movie. Mike, let's start with you. The UAW and Dauch Corporation, which owns American Axle, struck a tentative deal this week after 10 days on the picket line at the Three Rivers, Michigan axle plant. Walk us through what happened and what's in the deal.
Yeah, workers have a pretty good tentative agreement to vote on, in my opinion, at least. They're going to get that $30 per hour demand for wages that they had been holding out for. They were able to hold the line on healthcare premiums. They're getting a $2,000 ratification bonus. The Detroit News is reporting that workers hired prior to the Great Recession will automatically get boosted to 30, while the rest of them have a grow-in period. It's a 4-year deal. So basically what happened is that Dauch, American Axle, really didn't have any leverage in these talks. That's why they only lasted 10 days. We know from past experience, the UAW was willing to hold out as long as it took. They were willing to strike and hit the company where it hurts. Not just them, but their biggest customer, General Motors. It was hurting them. Larry can talk about that in a little bit. You know, there's a pretty classic tactic by corporations in strikes like these, which is to sort of dangle the threat of moving production to places like Mexico where wages are a lot lower. They couldn't really do that this time around because of the tariffs that are in place. So their costs would not be as low as they otherwise would be. So American Axle also, they didn't have the moral high ground here. They have been paying their workers less than what they were 18 years ago, in spite of record auto sales about a decade ago, in spite of tremendous resiliency throughout the industry, in spite of COVID, the chip shortage, things like that. The industry is doing well. The workers deserved more money, and it looks like they got it.
You know what? Can I jump in here on this, on the actual terms of this deal? I know Mike said it's a good deal, and relative to where they are today, it probably looks like a pretty good deal. But relative to where they were in 2007, it's a crappy deal. It's $1 more an hour than what they were making in 2007. That's almost 20 years ago. When, if you go back to everywhere else in the economy, right, wages are nowhere near what they were 20 years ago. So yes, relative to where they are today, when they were severely underpaid relative to their Detroit 3 counterparts and relative to other workers in the economy, it's a better deal. But long term, this is really it's kind of disheartening. I mean, I worked at an employer where those of us that come from newspapers, where raises disappeared, and we actually gave back some pay cuts. We took some pay cuts, try and keep the paper alive. It's no fun. It's kind of reprehensible to me that this supplier who made a bunch of money never shared it.
Larry makes a really good point, and I don't think anybody's saying a $1 an hour raise, and you have to adjust for inflation too, so it maybe
Right.
even not be that, but a $1 raise over 2008 levels is tremendous. But again, it's all relative, and in contract disputes and in strike, you're never going to make it all back at once, right?
Right.
So they did the necessary step of stopping the bleeding, right? They're turning around the Titanic from continual losses or a continual status quo that's not keeping up with inflation to finally at least getting back to where they were, if not slightly ahead of where they were 18 years ago. So of course it's not perfect, and they deserve to make way more, because when you compare the work they're doing and the money they're making at the end of this deal with what the Detroit 3 or other unionized auto workers are making, they're still making a lot less than folks at Dearborn Truck or even Volkswagen in Chattanooga, right? So it's not perfect, but it's just the nature of how these things work. You're not going to get it all back at once, just like the Detroit 3 in 2023, right? Sean Fain wanted way more than what he ended up getting. He's going to take another bite at the apple here in 2028 to try to get even more. And that's, I assume, is what will happen the next time this contract's up too.
Yeah. And let's be real, in this economy, when a company makes $1, it either goes to shareholders, it goes to management, or it goes to workers. And that's a descending order of those three, right? It usually goes to shareholders, then it goes to management. And then if there's any left over, then, then traditionally what happens is we'll pass along some raises. The demographics of the American workforce are such that I don't know that this is sustainable. That setup is sustainable for much longer, because worker power, I guess, worker collective bargaining power is going to start to increase, because demographically we are growing older as a nation. And now we've shut off the influx of immigrants largely that supplemented that, which means there are going to be fewer workers to do those jobs. And not everything is going to be AI. It's a problem that's 15 or 20 years down the road still, but it's coming.
Now, this strike threatened axle supply for the Silverado and Sierra, GM's most profitable pickups. Now, Larry, there's been all kinds of supply threats in that segment. Think about Ford's F-150s in low supply because of the Novelis aluminum plant fires. How do automakers balance costs and supplier relations with this really fragile supply? Can they diversify?
Well, the funny thing, they can diversify somewhat, but you still, every time you open up another supplier, you open up more tooling that supplier has to buy, you increase your costs, right? Yes, you're buying an insurance policy, really, when you do that diversification, because the more you can consolidate your supply, the lower your per unit cost is. So that's why they go all in with one maker like this, because it gives them the cheapest cost to produce. There's some of that, but the thing about full-size trucks especially, which is what we're talking about here, you have to remember that the inventory of full-size trucks has kind of stayed relatively flat, even with the problems that Ford has had with Novelis. And the reason is that, other automakers have increased production a little bit. The overall industry levels are pretty stable in terms of days supply. And it's funny with full-size trucks, because unlike all these other segments, full-size trucks are the most diverse product mix that you have, right? So if you're a dealer, you have to decide what full-size trucks I'm going to stock, what ones are going to get offered. And there are, look at all the different configurations there are of pickups, right? There's crew cab, standard cab, extended cab, short bed, medium bed, long bed. Then you got all the engine configurations. It's a nightmare to try and order, right? If you're ordering and you have to guess what your customers are going to want, and you have to keep that in stock, it can be really difficult for a dealer, which is why you see all these dealers with all these trucks on the lot, because they have a very diverse offering. They have very diverse use cases. It's not all just good, better, best, right? It's all these different configurations. So pickup trucks always have really high day supply because of all the different configurations they are.
All right. Coming up, Ford got rid of the Escape and the Edge, and now those customers need a new home. Mike has a story on where they're ending up. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Solid-state batteries are going from hype to reality. And this week on Shift, we're digging into what new battery chemistries could mean for cost and EV adoption.
Factorial Energy CEO Siyu Huang talks about developing a new solid-state liquid metal battery with Mercedes, an innovation that could change the weight and the cost of new vehicles.
With the same energy, we could deliver a lighter pack. which eventually will be able to drive down the cost of the vehicle.
Huang also explains how competition with China is affecting the solid-state market and the geopolitical tensions impacting the arrival of solid-state batteries.
Join us for Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Michael Martinez and Larry Bellaquette. All right, Larry, so Japanese automakers have absorbed $28 billion in combined costs from U.S. tariffs, EV write-downs, and emissions policy reversals. And that number could top $40 billion by March 2027. Toyota's hit alone is more than $17 billion. Put that in perspective for us.
It is a tough order to put in perspective, right? These are giant numbers that don't really have relevance for the average consumer, right? You're talking about the whole government programs that run on that kind of money, defense purchasing programs that run on that kind of money. It's a crazy amount of money that Japan has paid in tariffs. Remember that number was not there 2 years ago, right? It's just, here we're going to add $40 billion to your business planning. We're in an industry that moves like, that turns like an old World War I battleship. It does not move quickly. And so trying to get it to adjust to paying these kind of numbers. And, if you look on our price tracker on the autonews.com website, you're seeing the direct result of those numbers on that price tracker, right? We're up almost $1,900 per vehicle. That's the average across. It's actually over $1,900 over last year. The prices have gone up in just 1 year, the average prices. And that's not all mixed. That's not all just the Explorer and stuff like that. We're talking about big moves, price moves that are happening all over the place.
Now, Honda saw its first annual loss in nearly 70 years as a public company. And we just talked last week about Toyota canceling the Lexus LFZC. Is this the moment where Japanese automakers are being forced to fundamentally rethink their U.S. strategy?
Yeah, I think so. And, you can look up and down the list. Larry, you've written a lot about Subaru, which was just on a hot streak for forever until the tariffs hit, right? I think there was some news recently. They're going to start bringing some cars from the U.S. back to Japan after
a car.
A car.
The Ascent, which doesn't sell very well here.
So I think they do need to reassess the strategy. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know how viable it is for many of them to build new plants here, because that's sort of what it would take in this moment to get around the tariffs. I don't know if there's a wait and see game until after a lot of these trade deals get settled, if maybe things get a little bit better, or if maybe they wait it out for a next administration, or if maybe the answer is you sort of start to boost partnerships, similar to what we saw with Stellantis and JLR. Basically, Stellantis is going to give them some U.S. factory capacity to get around the tariffs. Maybe you'll see that with some of the Japanese imports as well.
Yeah, it's worth noting here that for those that don't know, Toyota owns stakes in both Subaru and Mazda. They're minority stakes. And those two automakers own minority stakes in Toyota as well. So they are corporate partners. Subaru and Toyota have jointly developed their EV offerings to the point where we have the Subaru Getaway and the Highlander EV, which are sister vehicles that are going to debut later this year, the 3-row EVs. So they've done that to try and cut costs already. And, those plans are several years old. But I think what you're seeing is you may see some more partnerships. We have that new plant coming for Toyota that's going to free up some capacity in Mexico. You may see some more, at least North American production coming. But remember that like Mazda and Subaru both have, Mazda has half a plant in the South, and Subaru has a plant in Indiana. These are single manufacturing plants in the U.S. They are not like Toyota or Honda that have a pretty large U.S. manufacturing footprint that allows them to at least adjust somewhat.
All right, so let's shift over here to Ford. Now, Mike, your story this week on Ford moving Escape and Edge buyers to the Explorer is a fascinating one. Sales were up 18% year over year through May. Ford's offering private discounts of up to $10,000 to keep those customers in the fold. And dealers are saying it's actually working. What's driving this?
Yeah, Kel, let's take a step back here. I think this is really surprising because when you take a look at Ford getting rid of the Edge in 2024 and the Escape last December, there was a big question, big concern amongst the dealers. Where are those entry level customers going to go? And the logical answer was, well, there's other vehicles in terms of the Escape on that same platform at relatively the same price, the Bronco Sport crossover and the Maverick compact pickup. So you assume they just move there, right? Well, that's not really the case. We're almost at the halfway mark of the year. Maverick and Bronco Sport sales are both down year over year. Explorer sales are up, as you mentioned. Explorer's bigger and it costs more money. I think the cheapest Explorer is about 10 grand more than the cheapest Escape. So we talk week in and week out about this affordability crisis, but yet Ford is having success moving these customers up. How is it doing it? Well, you mentioned the private offers. Had a dealer tell me customers can get up to 10 grand. Coincidentally, the price difference between the cheapest Escape and Explorer. So score one for targeted incentives, right? Before, Ford would just sort of throw money everywhere. Lately, it's been doing these sort of targeted precision strikes where it thinks it can make up for some sales, for some lost sales. And it's apparently working. I've had executives tell me they're retaining Edge and Escape customers at the same rate as they were before those vehicles were discontinued. But another thing I think it's worth talking about is just the brand cachet Explorer has. This was the SUV in the 90s. It landed that starring role in Jurassic Park, right? It was in the zeitgeist. It was in everybody's minds. And Ford racked up millions of Explorer sales in those early days. It sort of evolved to fit the times. They went from that body on frame boxy styling to unibody front wheel drive. Then they went back to rear wheel drive with the last generation. So it's evolved as the times have evolved. And it seems to be evolving again by being versatile enough to get these Escape and Edge customers. So Explorer, it's an important part of Ford's lineup. That importance is just growing. And I didn't expect this one, honestly.
It's funny. If you go back, you remember when Explorer used to have a 2-row version, right?
Yeah.
That was, it competed directly with when it was first introduced with the Jeep Cherokee.
And they had a pickup version.
Cherokee. And they had a pickup version. Yeah. Well, yeah. The Explorer Sport.
And the Eddie Bauer's collaboration.
That was the one. The Eddie Bauer. I remember being in middle school, and I was like, that's gonna be my first car is an Eddie Bauer Explorer. I remember everyone thinking that was like the coolest collaboration. Was that like the first
collaboration
between like a clothing brand and an automaker at that time? Because that was like 99, 98. Because I don't think
there was something maybe in the luxury space. I don't know. But
we had just come out of, having electricity in 99 and 98. So
you know what? I do remember this though. I saw a video about this and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to have to look this up and listeners look this up because I'm probably going to butcher this. But in the 70s or the 80s, there was a collaboration between Cadillac and Gucci. And I remember seeing pictures of this car. I almost want to Google it right now while we are doing this show because I don't want to misspeak.
But we're live, Kel.
We're live. I know, right? Yes, here we go. Mm-hmm. The Cadillac Seville by Gucci is a rare custom design luxury sedan released in 1979, an iconic collaboration between the American automaker and the Italian fashion house. Only about 300 of the disco era time capsules were ever built. I remember
79 Seville was a piece of work too, by the way.
Did you hate the 4-door Seville, Larry?
No, but it was just not good. It had a horrible engine. It was Yeah, you don't want to go back to this.
We don't want to go back to okay. But
we don't want
that's
to
what
go
I'm saying,
back to 70s era of GM design. That's late
that's
70s era. Yeah.
just a dark time. Okay. Before we wrap up, now, Larry, from the outside looking in, what does it tell you about the state of the market that Ford can successfully upsell a customer from a $31,000 Escape to a $41,000 Explorer? And does that work at any other brand right now?
People get upsold all the time, Kel, and they have to have a compelling offer, and they have to be able to convince people to shell out the extra money. I mean, if you're going to give me 10 grand for free, then it's a pretty easy walk to get a $31,000 or $41,000 Ford for $31,000, right? That's a pretty compelling notion. But I'm just curious whether it's sustainable. You're going to get this, whether they're going to keep that long term, and how do you say to one customer, hey, yeah, I had a private offer because I was coming out of my Escape to go into an Explorer because they wanted to keep me on the brand. The real money in this industry is being able to keep customers coming back without the added incentives. That's how you make the money. So yeah, you can do this. You can buy share all day long with people. And the Explorer, I'm not knocking the Explorer. It's a good vehicle. It certainly earned its place as an iconic nameplate. And it's been around a very long time, and it's very successful. I just don't know how you convince people to take a 3-row when they've had a 2-row, and especially 3-row or 2 rows that are easier to park than what an Explorer is.
Well, I would say really quickly for both Escape and Edge, when you compare it to the Edge, it's only about 9 or 10 inches larger.
Well, that's true.
So it's not that much difference. And then when you look at Escape customers, it's obviously a much smaller product, but Explorer still has that unibody design. So the driving dynamics it's not as much of a shock going from an Escape to an Explorer as it would have been in that first or second gen model. Right. So it sort of appeals to both. What I learned from Ford's utility marketing manager was Escape buyers are actually pretty old. The average is in their mid 60s. So they actually want a little more refinement. They want a little more ease of getting in and out of the vehicle. They do want to be able to take it, go see the kids, go see the grandkids. So it's not as difficult of a sell as I certainly thought, and as maybe I think anybody might have thought here.
Mike, Larry, it's always great hanging out with you guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Kel.
You have a good weekend, Kel, and go Spurs.
All right. All right. That's all for this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the second week of June 2026. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on the UAW, Ford's product strategy, Japanese automaker earnings, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back on Monday for a conversation with Siyu Huang, CEO of Factorio Energy, the solid-state battery company that says it's close to bringing the technology to mass market. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.